Where's Julie? Hello. Hi, good evening. Okay, we're going to start. My name is Roy Schaefer. I am the mayor of the Village of Friendship Heights. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining our town hall, whether in person or by live stream. Tonight, we are honored to have Montgomery County Executive Marc Elrich speak to us about development matters affecting the Village of Friendship Heights. County Executive Elrich was elected as Montgomery County Executive on November 6, 2018, and was re-elected to a second term in 2022. Before becoming County Executive, he served for 12 years as an at-large member of the Montgomery County Council and nearly 2 decades on the Tacoma Park City Council. So welcome, County Executive Elrich, and thank you for joining us. I'm sorry. Approximately every 25 years, the Parks and Planning Commission prepares a sector plan to make recommendations on zoning, land use, housing, transportation, parks, and open spaces, and other strategies for our county communities. The current sector plan for Friendship Heights was issued in 1998. Parks and Planning is now preparing an update to the 1998 plan. The preliminary recommendations, released February 12th, increase the allowed height of new-rise residential buildings that can be constructed along North Park Avenue, Friendship Boulevard, and Shoemaker Farm Lane, increasing population, density, and traffic while diminishing green space, light, and visual diversity for properties in the village. Tonight, we hope to discuss these concerns and other issues. I want to acknowledge the work of our Development Committee, which includes council members and residents. Led by the committee chair, Councilmember Francine Klein, they have worked hard to address village concerns and promote our interests. Now, please welcome our guest, Montgomery County Commissioner Marc Elrich. Thank you.
So, thank you all for having me out here. The first time I got involved in village stuff, I think was the 1998 plan, and I actually wrote a letter. I forget whether it got published in the Post or the Journal, supporting the residents on the proposed zoning back then. And I was in Tacoma Park, but we had experiences with park and planning, and and I was involved with other groups because in the process of doing some of the work I did in Silver Spring and in Tacoma Park, I learned how to read traffic studies. I could tell you if somebody was doing a development and they had a traffic study, I could tell you whether they were lying to you or not. It's a real thing. I could tell you whether they had counted things properly. I could tell you how much density comes off of a particular project and what the impact was going to be on the schools. It was fun learning all that stuff. But as a result of it, I wound up working with different civic associations around the county for years, helping them understand what master plans look like and what the likely impacts were going to be on their community. So I've been doing this a while. I was elected to the council in Tacoma Park in 1987. I spent 19 years doing that and 12 years on the county council, and then the last seven years and a couple of months as county executive. I'd say that, right now is a very difficult time to be dealing with park and planning. It is the most anti-citizen park and planning group that I have ever seen. You have planning board members who have publicly said to residents that we don't need to listen to you. We've heard all that. They've told developers, don't go talk to the residents. You don't have to. These are our decisions. This is the kind of planning board you have now. The chair equally does not care. We're dealing with parts in my end of the county with displacement, where large numbers of affordable housing are being targeted for removal. And the response to the planning chair when you say, where are these people going to go, is they'll find somewhere. This is not the way that used to be. When anybody, and I know there are people here who've been involved in planning for years, You've done these battles before. In the old days, you had a planning board that paid more deference to the citizens. You actually appointed a citizen committee to your master plans, and the citizen committee worked with the planning staff. And I sat on the Silver Spring Master Plan, I think around 2000 or 2002. They sat with the citizens, and the staff was the citizen staff. The staff wasn't there to tell you what we're going to do to you. The staff was there to listen to what residents wanted and try to fashion a plan that met a variety of different needs and interests. There were developers on these committees. There were citizens from different neighborhood groups. There were environmental folks on these committees. It was a wide range. And they were the folks who sat down and actually voted on a plan. You'd vote on a proposal. What do you want this block to look like? What are we talking about for heights and things like that? You voted and you made recommendations. And then it would go to the board, and then it would wind up in the council's hands. But everybody knew that it had a lot of citizen input in the process of going from an idea to the end result. What you're looking at now is a totally top-down driven program. The planning staff decides what they want to do to you. They will then tell you what they're going to do to you. They will give you Post-it notes so you can express your opinions about what they're going to do to you. But your Post-it notes aren't worth the paper they're written on, and they don't generally get taken into consideration. And that's been the pattern here for a number of years, going back to when Casey Anderson was chair of the planning board. And it's a problem because going from a robust system that involves citizens, so everybody owned it. When I was on the committee in Silver Spring, I didn't get everything I wanted. I didn't expect to get everything I wanted. I expected to be a member of the community voicing concerns, and other people had concerns. We all talk together and get to a place that we're all peaceful at. And, you know, I looked at more density than I wanted, but I had things that were important that we got considered that I also wanted. So there's a process that we've done before and that works, and we've completely walked away from that. You're suffering with this thing called Thrive. It was done in the middle of COVID, rewriting the zoning code for the entire county at a time when people couldn't come together. There wasn't a reason in the world why that couldn't have been paused until COVID was over, and then you go around and invite people to meetings and do real meetings in person and talk about, is this what you want? So now when they say they're doing something, they're saying they're doing this to carry out Thrive. And I guarantee you that almost nobody in this room knows what Thrive is and what it allows the planning board or the council to do and how radically it changes zoning in Montgomery County, because you never got to be part of those discussions. So that's a problem. Now you're dealing with what they're proposing over here. You know, I don't live here, but I've heard from a number of you about what your concerns are. And it seems to me that if government agencies are here for the people who live here, we do live here, you all pay taxes here, that there ought to be some willingness to listen to what people have to say. You are possibly the densest place in the universe, at least in the United States, per square mile. That's nice. But does that mean you should get denser? You know, is there no limit to it? Is it just like, well, you're the densest, and so we can just add more density? What are the impacts of density? You have to think about what it's going to be done. Shadow means something. Shade means something. One of my favorite moments, because developers can be so bad and yet they can be priceless sometimes. There's a big fight over in Bethesda at the corner of 355 and East West Highway on top of the Metro. And a developer had the right to build a big building there. And it was so nice to hear the developer whose building was going to be behind that building talk about the loss of a view shed. Because that's something they would never say when they were trying to jam their projects over on a neighborhood. But when it was their project, that view shed was really, really important to them. So view sheds do matter. And they matter here. How many cars you put on the street matters. You're dense. Not everybody rides Metro. You know, you can't assume, which they like to do, that if we had more people here, they're all using Metro. That is just flat out not true. It's not been true anywhere. That if you're lucky, a Metro stop hits 50% ridership, and by and large, they don't hit 50% ridership. And so if you add 1,000 people, then you may get 50% ridership, but you just also have another 500 people who are going to be driving. So all those things have real impacts on your community. There was supposed to be a ballpark. I still remember, it's the 98 plan that's got a ballpark down there. And I just looked at this thing. It's just a yellow place. There's no ballpark there anymore. That's what's in your master plan. Why they're not showing what's in your master plan is a little bit odd. I mean, this is where you are right now with a ballpark plan for that area there. You would think they would show the ballpark that was planned there. They don't show it. So I think a couple of things are important. You got to get really good about the facts in this plan and organizing your thinking and talking to the planning and to the council. You have the benefit of this being an election year. There are more of you than there are developers. So you can remind people of that. You should understand what the traffic impacts are going to be. You can get tangible numbers. I'm going to be asking my staff to do a traffic study because I didn't see a traffic study attached to anything. You ought to be talking about that before you try to sell this to people so people understand what the impacts are going to be. And you're in a very sensitive place. You know, this can become a choke point. It seems to me that the economic future of Friendship Heights is a little bit in question. You're losing some major retail spaces. This is no longer Rodeo Drive. It's got a different mix. So what is the best use for the properties on the other side of the street? And how are those properties going to interface with the neighborhood that backs up to their parking lots right now? That's going to be a very different experience than being next to the parking lots and the low-rise buildings over there. You should try to get meetings with all the council members and go to their offices. You can invite them out here, but it's helpful to go to people's offices and try to get everybody to take a meeting with you and make a point. If they don't want to take a meeting with you, they should be willing to sit down with you and talk about that. They should be able to articulate what it is they're trying to achieve. They're going to talk about housing. They may use the word affordable housing. They try to do that every time they talk about affordable housing. I don't see anything that looks remarkably affordable in what's being proposed over there. You will get the typical minimum amount of housing. I think you're going to get 15%. That's what we get if you didn't get anything. You would get not an inch of extra density if you just provide the required amount of affordable housing. Are you going to get deeper affordable housing? You're going to get MPDUs, which serve people with incomes of around $70,000 to $80,000, or you can get housing for people whose incomes are lower, because that housing is almost impossible to find in Montgomery County. And Park and Planning is busy rezoning it out of existence, which means it's even harder to find in Montgomery County. But you should understand what it is they're proffering or what they're proposing to do, and what are they going to give developers density bonuses for. Because I saw some property that had the base density and then the added density, and I'm still trying to figure out what do you have to do to merit getting the additional density. So you got to get educated, and you got to be organized. Petitions are really good things to get out of your buildings, draw as many people into this as you can draw into it, and be vocal. Residents, the experience, and people say to me, why won't the council listen? It's like, well, if you don't engage them, if all you do is write a letter and then you're gone, then that's not much of a presence, and people don't take that very seriously. If you don't talk politics, and that's the language all of us understand, if you do stuff, and I can tell you, in Walmart tried to move into Upper George Avenue by Aspen Hill, and the residents made it very clear that there won't be any votes for any council member who votes for the Walmart proposal. So this was a proposal that would have passed the council with a narrow majority. It was rejected by the council on a 9-0 vote because residents made it clear there were consequences for what you do. So don't be afraid to have consequences. Politics is a little bit of a contact sport. So you've got to play like you really want to win. I assume you guys really want to win, so let them know this really matters to you. And my office will be as helpful as possible. Debbie Spielberg, who's here, is on my staff and has been on my staff for almost as long as I've been a council member, so she goes back with me. Is it 15 years now? 17 years, long time. And Dale Tibbetts has been with me since I was a council member in the beginning, and with a number of unsuccessful races for the council before that. So I've got staff who's got long experience. Claire Isley worked on planning for Marilyn Praisner when she was there, and she works with me. And Meredith Wellington, who I think some of you know, used to be on the planning board, and she has my staff as well. And so I've had the luxury of actually having planning board members on my staff, or former planning board members of my staff for most of the time that I've been elected. So if I need to talk to somebody who knows planning, I can actually just go down the hall and say, hey, what am I dealing with here? Tell me what I should be looking at. And they're available to help you understand some of these issues. So I think that's kind of an overview, but I know you guys have questions, so ask me questions.
Thanks for giving me the first question. David Churchill, resident of the Willoughby. First of all, I want to say I'm sorry about the term limit. That, to me, was a dirty trick, and I wish we could have you for one more term. That being said, I'd like to get your reaction to the changing of the landscape in terms of public financing and how that's going to affect the planning board in the future. First of all, you know, we have our current council member, District 1, who's not using public financing, and I would encourage everyone to look into that, who's funding these campaigns that are not publicly financed. But in terms of this, you know, now that we have, it's up to the council what the land use is going to be, and so now that we have a public financing mechanism, how is that going to change the planning board?
So we've had this mechanism for a while, longer than you've had this planning board. So it has had no direct effect yet on the planning board. You also have to be careful about people who, even people who take public financing. So if you figure you can raise enough money to run a campaign, and you take a long-term view, say you wanted to run for the House of Representatives, right? You can, by your votes, prove how trustworthy you are to the people that you're not taking money from, because you don't want their money now. You want their money when you're getting into a House race where there is no public financing and money is going to be everything. And so what you demonstrate is your loyalty to their positions while not taking any money from them. And so you can't just go by whether or not they take money. Also look at, remember, in public financing, you can give us $500. I think you can give an executive even more than $500. No? 500 same? So you can give an executive $500. You know, 100 developers giving somebody $500 is not chump change. Getting their family members and kids and dogs to do the same, they don't actually do dogs. But you get the idea that you can generate a lot of money. So if you want to get curious, you go to the public financing list. All of us have a list of who our donors are, and look through the list of donors and to see who they work for and how much money they gave and how many family members gave them money, to get an idea whether the same donors who are donating to one person in a not publicly financed campaign are also covering their bets by giving donations to somebody else who is saying they are publicly financed, but you can see who thinks they're worth investing in. And trust me, these are investments. I've never taken this money, even when I was running for council and there was no law saying we were publicly financed. I struggled. I was always the lowest finance campaign in any race, but I was always willing to do that because I know you don't get money for nothing. Anybody who tells you they're just my friends, that's not the way this game gets played. And people will tell you that, one of the former council members used to talk about it, why he took money from developers, because it was so much easier to raise his campaign money on far fewer donations than having to try to get hundreds of ordinary citizens to make the donations. Developer money is quick and fast and easy to assemble. So get a couple people, pull their campaign reports. If you have any question about somebody, if their job isn't listed, do they put who their employer is or just their industry? So take their name and you're really curious, somebody's giving $500, put it into LinkedIn. I do that. When I was turning back contributions, if I got $500 from somebody I didn't know, I would put their name into LinkedIn and see whether I could take their money or not. So that's the source that you can get information on.
Hi, my name is Afsaneh Mirfandareski. I'm from 4620. Thank you for your educational but incredibly depressing presentation.
Thank you.
I don't get that involved with county politics. I get more involved with federal stuff and super local at Friendship. I was not aware of Thrive that you're saying came through the rewriting of the zoning code. I had a quote here that I put together for you, which I thought you might appreciate. Basically, our zoning laws are now a situation where capitalism moves into the neighborhood to gain from us instead of neighborhoods being served by capitalism. So we're just like, I sometimes get a little crass and I say we're now a urinal. They just come here and they pee to make profit. And we're here to serve them. And if anybody reads the Gospels, that's a really bad sign. And what I wanted to ask you, because we've lost two CVSs, we've lost a Giant, we've lost a very large Panera that served as a community hub, but we've gained a Porsche showroom. It's not funny, sir, because I think I'm Iranian by birth. I think these things add up. That's how you get to a world war, because it's incompetence at local, state, federal, national, international. Everything has been given over to capital, and it's become psychopathic. Now, I wanted to ask you, because I'm a little bit outraged, as our county executive, I would hope that your office could work really actively with our development committee, because as much as I appreciated your telling us that the planning board is, anti-citizen, and I 100% trust you on that, I'll be honest with you, for me, it sounds like I'm on the plane and the captain is saying, the co-pilot is drunk, the stewardess is about to slash her wrists, and we're out of water. So I'm like, don't make us feel so hopeless. And give us better guidance. I want to know which one of the council members to go for, and I'll go for them instantly. I want guidance, so I'm going to beg you to set up a framework so that our community office, here, our development committee, can have access to you, and I'll work with them. We need information. I'm a petition person, a lot of people know here, and we'll get on them.
That's why I pointed out my staff. We will work with you.
Thank you.
We've worked on the other zoning projects. We've worked on every zoning project that's been in front of the planning board. My folks are engaged on it. We will be engaged on it.
Thank you, because in order to create petitions, I've created multiple very successful petitions. We had our biggest change election here in 40 years as a result. But you need bullet points for people. You need to say, this guy's good, this guy's bad, get rid of this one, do this, get on with it. And I didn't hear that in this presentation, sir. So I'm hoping, we got all the news of what's wrong, but I'm hoping that we have channels open to communicate so that we can get our end of the thing done. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Suzanne, just quick. We've had disagreements in the past, but I want to tell you how much I appreciate your being here today. And unlike our previous speaker, I think you've been extremely helpful and extremely practical with the advice that you've given us. You've also shown you're in sympathy with our concerns. Your staff is available. I hope everyone here from the village government follows your instructions to the letter. I really appreciate your being here.
Thank you.
Hello, Christine Nauer from Willard Towers at the bottom of the hill. I am glad you're here, and sounds like you're on our side, but I'm not sure everybody here understands what this planning board is doing and the zoning they're talking about. I read it, I've commented on it with the planning board, and we're now at the stage where preliminary recommendations, that's where we are. So would you please explain to people here what you're talking about with the whole village, with the height zoning that they're voting upon? It's 200 feet, I understand, which is a 20-story or 21-story building everywhere. Am I correct?
Most of it.
Okay.
I saw some places where it had 100 on it, but most of it.
Yeah, but that's a heck of a lot for
Yep.
a community, that, as you said, that's already dense. And we're going to create more canyons coming down Willard Avenue, Friendship Boulevard, et cetera. Those are wind tunnels. Those are dangerous. The density is dangerous for traffic. I'm also on the ad hoc Village Climate Advisory Committee, and we're very concerned about dog waste, runoff into the creek from such developments. So I'm happy you're on our side, but I think people really need to know what's at stake here, and it's a lot. Thank you.
I feel like you guys have a good sense of what's at stake, because the place is not going to be the same. I will get my staff to do a traffic study. You will need that. You'll want to know where the traffic's going to flow and what happens if they close, say if they decide they want to close one exit from this area, what's the implications for everything else? And I can get my staff to do that. And just in general, we're available to work with you.
Hello, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you coming to our community and saying hello. I've been a pest to the council. Ms. Klein's been helpful. I've been concerned about the environmental effects of the demolition of Geico. I've written the Department of Health. I've written, we're trying to understand a little more about the permitting, and I once again appreciate the support that I am getting in trying to get answers. But this is where we will need your help. The building is, I don't know how many years old. There's asbestos. There's issues about what will happen in the air when it is demolished. There are seniors, there's children, there's all of us. So if you could think about that, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Debbie, note for.
Thank you for joining us. I live in the Willoughby. There's another issue about the Geico building that hasn't been focused on. Montgomery Planning itself called out the Geico building in 2011 for special consideration as a mid-century modern building that they were promoting in their blog. And it's called Modern Montgomery. It was designed by a well-known architect who designed most of downtown Philadelphia. So I agree completely about the environmental problems of tearing that building down. But the idea that planning is going to push this through without a thorough consideration of the historic preservation possibilities for this building, when they themselves were promoting it as a special example of mid-century modern, is ridiculous. You know, that needs to be explored. And they would have a hard time contradicting that, given their own promotion of the building. So I'd just like to make your staff and you aware of that.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah,
So-
most
So
people.
thank you for,
I don't think many people are. And they've been very quiet about that. And I also would like to say that even though this is just a village meeting, there are recommendations for the sector area outside the village that will impact those of us who live in the village, like the 200 and 250 feet new heights on Wisconsin Avenue, and 100 feet on the entire Geico lot. So we need to look at all of that, and I will ask to get the card for your staff. It'll be very helpful to talk with her. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lenny Berliner. I live right here in Willard Towers down the road. And I was glad to hear that you understood the problems that we have with the Planning Commission and the Planning Board. Can they be fired? If they're not, well, no, it's a serious question. It's a serious question.
So
You're
only
the
if
county
the
executive. No, you're the county executive.
I don't appoint them.
Ah, they're mis-
I vetoed 2 appointments. They overrode my vetoes. If they come up again, which they may come up before I leave, I plan on vetoing them again. They will simply override me. You need to elect council members. The council members could remove them. They could say, if I were a council member and I had somebody on tape saying you shouldn't listen to residents, I'd play the tape and I would move for the council to remove that person from the planning board. They have no business being on a citizen planning board
great. That's
if they're not
correct.
going to listen to you.
Right,
And
we know
there's not a
that.
single council member who's been willing to call for their resignation. I've called for their resignation, but I'm not in a position to do it. Next year, I might be in that position.
Okay, because this is something that's been very unclear, you know.
Yep,
They seem to sort of be immune.
yes. We've been trying to we had a bill in with Prince George's County. We're trying to reorganize park and planning. It is unique in the country. There is no place else where they're not part of the county government. They're actually not part of the county government. They are an independent state agency. I have no control over them other than to fund them. And so they're often their own thing. And so they've been able to grow the department and to expand their reach and to make decisions without engaging the community. And the group that's supposed to have oversight is the council. But, the council they don't work overseeing departments every day. I was a council member. You are not a department manager.
Right.
And so if you don't know what's going on every day, there's basically nobody in the shop watching that organization. So we're going to try, I'll try, if I'm on council again, I'll work with Prince George's County. We're going to try to recreate this department like every other department in the country. That is not a good situation we have right now.
So none of the sort of national level rah-rah planning, people downtown, none of them have any kind of input?
Nope.
You know who I mean?
And they generally will not opine on their colleagues.
Lovely. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Leah Mamniashvili. I live in the Willoughby. I have a 9-year-old severely disabled boy. You've met him. I just want to point out what I'm seeing as a general trend of disregarding how certain decisions by the authorities affect people's lives at the county and at the state level. Last week, the Maryland General Assembly voted for the budget, and they took away $125 million from Developmental Disabilities Administration, while the governor is giving $500 million to child care scholarships. He's fooling no one. Those are not scholarships. Those are grants for people who have jobs and who have healthy children, while they're pushing the disabled people over the cliff. Every single delegate of District 16 voted for that cut. Mark Horman, Sarah Wallach, Teresa Woolman, Senator Sarah Love. I was very disappointed. We lobbied very hard, but they just didn't care. I'm in a litigation with Montgomery County Public Schools because they want to cut my son's physical therapy from 90 minutes to 30 minutes. They don't care. Even though the law is on my side, to prove my right, I have to go to court and hire a lawyer and pay $500. It's going to cost me $30,000 to go into administrative hearing, money which I don't have because I'm a single mother and I'm a full-time caregiver of my son. So this has been a general trend. So I just want to urge my fellow citizens to vote them out, the people who don't care about the most vulnerable, and vote this governor out. And this is a bigger fight. It's bigger and larger than just one development project. It's been a trend. And then similar to the lady who comes from Iran, I also grew up in a dictatorship and totalitarian regime, and I know how it crawls up, and then one day you wake up and you're nobody. You don't matter. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Boy, that's an act to follow. I'm going to go back to the main issue we're on, but wow, let me know who to vote against. I have lived in this area. I'm from the Willoughby now, in the Willoughby. I've lived in this area and voted Democratic for 40-plus years when I came up from South Carolina. I have heard in previous times when the fate of this Geico lot came up that a traffic study was never done, as you cited. And the way they got away from that, I heard, was that Maryland folks said, oh, it's really a D.C. problem. And D.C. said it's really a Maryland problem, and the two areas would not work together. I so appreciate your committing that your staff will help. I hope it will do away with that problem, so at least we can have some facts to call attention to.
I can't change the problem of being a bi-jurisdictional area, but I can do a study. They've got a plan. I can, the traffic engineers can see the density they're proposing and where they're proposing it. And they would do the same with the plan on this side, so we can make the calculations. Even if DC doesn't participate, we should be able to get a good idea of what's going to happen.
Great, good. Thank you.
Hi, Ken Niles at Willoughby. Thank you so much for coming. Given that the planning board is not listening to us, as myself as a member of the development committee here, I take it from what you have said that we can expect nothing more from them. They're not going to change, and the only recourse we have is the new council that we will all be voting for this coming fall, and that we need to motivate them. And then can we assume, or I hope, that the new council can actually veto some of these actions that we think are really abhorrent?
Is this going to come to a council vote under this council, or? That's good. So, yes. So the next council doesn't have to pass this. The next council could say, send this back to the planning board. These are the directions.
I see.
This is something to do. It'll take 6 votes to do it.
So that leaves us back in limbo, though we haven't really solved anything. All we've done is put it back in the planning board's lap? Is that...
Well, you can put it back in the planning board's lap, but the council could send it back with directions. The council could say, we're not approving this. The council could get rid of the planning board members who don't think they should listen to you, which, if you're dumb enough to say that publicly, you ought to be able to pay for it.
Yeah. I mean, it is amazing. We have pretty much overwhelming support for what we wanted, which was not development on parcel 4 and parcel 6 right here in the immediate center of the village, plus concerns about the phase 2 on Friendship Boulevard. And to think that they just run roughshod over this is
Yes.
criminal, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Come on, let everybody else get questions first.
Hi, Mark.
Hey.
Voted for you twice. I'll be voting for you again, as always. Those of us who are skeptical about these development projects are often accused of being opposed to affordable housing because there's a housing shortage, people can't afford to live here, you know the whole story. So aside from questioning the development plans that are put forth there in the sector plan, what's your solution, if you have one, to providing actual affordable housing for people who need it?
Gosh, I could write a dissertation on this problem. Look, there are a number of things that have created this problem. One in Montgomery County specific, is the overzoning of everything for high-rise on the west side of the county. The effect of zoning is the value of land goes up when the zoning density goes up. So if you've got a property that's only zoned for a two-story building, the value of your land is pretty low based on what you could reasonably expect to generate from 2 stories. I give you 20 stories or 25 stories, the value of your land goes way up. The tenants that you're going to get up go way up in income because the cost of construction of stick-built stuff is maybe $300 a square foot. When you're getting into high-rises, you're talking $600 to $800 a square foot, if not more. So everything is driven into the stratosphere. So the park and planning zone, all this stuff in Bethesda for high-rise, it's not all being built. And there are developers who have actually gone to park and planning and asked them to approve a project with less density, and park and planning has tried to withhold approval of projects where they want to build what they know they can build, and the planning board wants high buildings, whether or not you're going to build it now or not. I would say the 2 of the developers that did that actually won, and I helped them, and I enjoyed that. Because it is absurd for the board to think that the right housing type is high-rise everywhere, when that pretty much guarantees that very little is going to be affordable. So that's structurally a problem. We have master plans that hold more than 100,000 people not going into your neighborhoods. We could build 100,000 units in Montgomery County over the next 30 years and not knock down anything in anybody's neighborhood. This is a manufactured crisis because they're trying to get at certain neighborhoods where they would like those people to be gone. That's why they're talking about University Boulevard. That's why they're talking about George Avenue. That's where you'll find people renting single-family houses on the boulevard, because that's a place most people would probably choose not to live at, and there are people who are lucky enough they can afford to rent that housing there. Those people will not be able to afford the new housing that gets built, and everybody knows it. It's not like I've discovered something unique. I didn't do any extraordinary research. The fact is, what gets built will not be affordable. You do a little bit of research, you discover if I can build 3 16-foot townhouses on a 60-foot wide lot and have 6-foot side yards. I could also build 2 24-foot wide townhouses. The 24-foot wides are much more valuable because the unit is much more like a house. You could have a corridor with both sides of a 24-foot wide building, having units or rooms on both sides of a 16-foot building with a 3-foot corridor in the middle of it means your rooms are tiny and small and not really functional. So people are going to opt to build the 2 units. And in Friedson's bill, you have no affordability requirement if you build 2 units instead of 3 units. So the thing that's economically advantageous that you will likely do requires no building of affordable housing, and he talks about this bill as more housing now, and he talks about affordable housing. It is simply false. It is not going to happen. And it is irritating that the planning board, which at least if they don't know it themselves, they could certainly go on AI and get perfectly credible stories. There's also a bunch of, and you start to see this now, there are a bunch of professors who are writing back against all this push for this, and it's a real thing. You will find that almost every place that has abolished single-family zones is a city, and they ran out of room. Minneapolis, you cannot build in Minneapolis if you're going to build a lot of new stuff without going after the old stuff, because Minneapolis is basically built out. Portland, largely built out. Arlington, my friend's on the board in Arlington. He served on the planning board before he was on the board of supervisors. He supports getting rid of single-family housing, but he said when they did their projections for the future growth, there is no place for the future growth without going after the existing built environment. That is not Montgomery County's shape. We have master plan after master plan around this county that is not built out, where we can build and bring in tens of thousands of new people here without touching anybody's existing housing. This isn't just about building. This is about displacing people they would like not to live here because it messes up our economics. You know, it's not pretty, but it's reality. So, you know, from my perspective, we need to double down on building the projects that we can build. We could invest more. My administration, we've done 9,200 units, new and preserved, that are affordable. And our affordable units run from 30% of AMI up to 80% of AMI. We're very deliberate about making sure we can house a broad range of people. We are on target. We can probably hit 10,000, and we will have spent probably $900 million. This is not cheap. You know, once land prices get out of control, buying land to bring it back into the point where you can actually build on it and build something affordable requires a lot of a subsidy that it didn't require before. So we're subsidizing things. I'm not a big fan, but the alternative would be not to build this stuff at all. And it is the workforce, which is the other thing people ignore. All these shops, all this retail, all the stuff which Park and Planning put on the ground because they said they want to cover everything in Montgomery County with retail on the ground floor. All that retail is jobs that do not pay a living wage. Don't come close to a living wage. So if you want all the amenities and all the goodies, it comes with people that we've got to take some responsibility for to make sure they can get housed. Because if they can't get housed here, they're not living here. If they're not living here, those shops don't exist, the restaurants don't exist. So I get a little bit wound up about this because it matters to me. Stop that. It matters to me that we have the ability to house everybody that we depend on in this community. And for these folks to get away with just saying more housing now, more housing everywhere, and without doing anything serious to make sure that it's affordable, that to me is distressing.
Hi, my name is Janice Mostow, and I live at the Willoughby. Thank you for being here. Can you repeat what you said about what the maximum height of a building according to, is it the planning board or the zoning board or whoever that is?
I was looking at the map that there's a map in the report. I guess that's the report from planning board, right? And it's got two maps side by side, one with the existing heights that were zoned in the 98 plan and the other one with the heights that are zoned in this plan. And so you can see where they come from there. And they are substantially higher across the board than they were in the last plan you were working on there.
So if something's being planned now under the 1998 plan, and it's not finished, but the new plan takes effect, then does that mean the buildings can be higher than what the current drawings showed?
They could even go back after, they could get their full approval. And then if the rezoning passes, they could come back and ask to reopen the zoning and get an approval under the new zone.
Okay, thank you.
Joyce Paul, the Elizabeth. Thank you for being here. To dot the I, we don't want this. And I'm suggesting that we get together, everybody has a petition in their building, and we take it to the governor and put him in the middle of this mess.
He can't help you.
Seriously.
Seriously. This is our mess. We control planning. Trust me, there are things he would do with planning that he can't do. A lot of us are frustrated about different things with planning. So, but he can't do anything.
Well,
So-
I don't know what else to say.
Well, then
I'm
what else to say
sorry.
is just make sure you get organized, get to the council members, talk to candidates who are running for office, and
Yeah,
see if you find
definitely.
people who are going to.
Yeah, but I mean, we don't want it. You don't hear one person say, oh, well, it's not that bad. It's really bad. And the housing thing you said, I was at a meeting, and they talked about, they took a building down that was worth something like $800,000, and they built 3 more houses with less parking, and each house was $1.2 million. So they didn't begin to do anything economically
That's the
sensible.
cheap one.
Each building was more.
There's a townhouse that was
It
built
was
on a
ridiculous.
single-family lot in Chevy Chase. And those units went on the market at north of $2 million each for 3 units. They paid less than $2 million for the lot with the house on it. So it's,
They say one thing, but it's completely the
yes,
opposite.
they do.
Anyway, that was my idea.
I'm sorry to discourage you on that one.
Hi, I'm Marvin Mostow. I live in the Willoughby. EYA is already starting to say they have that property where Geico is, and they're saying it's due to the 1997 plan. Is it just too late? I mean, the horse is out of the barn? or-
Objectively, yes, if they apply for something that's already zoned, they can build what it's zoned for. So if they build what was in the 98 plan, that's what they can build. They could, if this thing drags on, go out and say we want to rezone it under the new plan. But right now, if they put something in the ground to build, it's got to conform with 98.
Suppose 1997 was some time ago. Do the people that are living here now have no input into what's going to go on? Or is it just too late?
Now, when you've gone through the zoning process and your community had a very active role in that zoning process, whatever you got in 98 is what you got, and that's what you got to live with.
Good evening. I'm Larry Dondero. I live in the Elizabeth. I'm a neighbor of Joyce. And I echo her comments that most of us are against this. But there was one person in our building the other day who posted something on Building Link, our internal communications network, who actually is in favor of these buildings going up. And his point was kind of vague. He said studies have shown that more building would have a positive impact on property values. How do I counter that argument? I don't mean to put you on the spot because it's very vague. All he said was studies have shown. But how do you counter such an argument?
It all depends on the price point people build at. It really does. If somebody comes in and they build something luxury, it can work 2 ways. If your price is close to the price of a new unit, your unit might creep up. If there's a big difference between the two, it makes it either harder for them to go higher, because if your unit is comparable in size and amenities, it's hard to justify too big a price difference. But I've not seen new units go up where the values go down. But
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said I've not seen new units go up generally where values go down.
Okay.
They tend to go up, which means everything else becomes less affordable. Your taxes will also go up, and you've done nothing to your property to improve its value, other than the fact you're next door to a new building that improved your value.
Okay.
But, I would assume most people aren't going to cash out their house and take the money and run. If this is where you want to live, then all you've got is higher tax bills for the next X number of years.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Elrich, I just quickly wanted to ask you, is this your last year right now?
I cannot run for executive again.
Okay.
The developers put a lot of money into a campaign to get me term limited. They finally succeeded. But I am running for county council at large.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, excellent. Because I just wanted to clarify, I think one of our residents here was trying to kind of maybe inadvertently implied that I was going at you. I wanted to mention that I'm a fan of yours. I voted for you. I support you. It was just a constructive criticism that I brought along.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah, and I did want to say, Mr. Elrich, that I do, what I'm hearing here, I think there's a communication issue possibly. For example, if the Parks and Planning story, if there was a newsletter that you could create before you leave office that is updated every single month and lets us know which council member is vetoing a certain thing, just focus on Parks and Planning every month, because we're not informed. We need guidance. So I just wanted to put in a suggestion, a newsletter which is just focused county executive updates on Parks and Planning, I don't know which council member to go after and which one not to go after and all of that stuff. It's very unclear.
I would say that I can do more. I did a lot of stuff around the housing stuff that was in front of the state legislature.
Yeah.
I went down to the legislature and testified and helped get people to come into a coherent position about what and we actually were successful. The state did not go through with the worst of what they were going to do. And we've provided information on the zoning, so you could look, I could let you see what we've put out so far, which is pretty extensive on housing. But I'll tell you on the political part of this, what you want to do, you need to ask the council members, you need to tell them that whatever you tell us, we're going to put out publicly.
Okay.
Because if somebody thinks this is a conversation between you and them, and that doesn't get any farther than that,
Yeah.
that's a problem. But if somebody's trying to play both sides, like curry favor with the developers, but willing to pacify you, you want to get the answer out publicly so you and the developer can decide which side of this
I
you're
just
on.
think prior to your leaving office, there is an opportunity to create a framework where your legacy continues because things become extra transparent as a result of that framework where they have to report it every month.
I am going to talk about making
yeah.
this more transparent.
So secondly, Mr. Elrich, I wanted to say a couple of ladies talked about Geico. I'm a trained architect. I completely agreed with the ladies about the asbestos, but also about the building. The building is the style is in the style of Mies van der Rohe, who was a Bauhaus architect who moved to the United States after the war. He designed the campus of, I believe, University of Chicago. It's in his style. I always assumed that that is a historic building. I'm very, very shocked that it can be taken down. So just putting that's a very valuable design. I think in its day, it was valued as a landmark in the United States as a mid-century Mies van der Rohe style building. And just finally, I think a lady just referenced my heritage. I just wanted to clarify when I mentioned capitalism, I didn't mention it in terms of the government of any particular nation. I mentioned it in the context of war is the ultimate extension of capitalism and greed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. I'm Francine Klein. I live in the Elizabeth, and I'm also a council member here in the village. Thank you very much for coming. It's great to hear everyone here talk and tell you how we feel, and I know that you have been a proponent your whole career of listening to communities, so thank you. I want to mention about the Geico property that we're not done yet because not everything that was in the 98 plan is being adhered to. And we still have opportunities to comment. The developer there, EYA, has put in a site plan and a preliminary plan and a final plan trying to truncate the process. And we haven't even seen that yet formally to analyze it, but we have questions about it, and we have hired legal counsel and we are getting advice. But there are issues there, and I've spoken to you about some of them, including the traffic issues that I see are problematic, the height of the buildings, and generally not having a plan for the entire site that we can examine holistically. So I just wanted to let people know that that's where we stand. I'm not saying that it will come out any differently, but we're certainly going to try our best to follow what's going on and to try to affect it as we can. And so thank you for that, and once again, we appreciate your support on the
Send me
traffic.
something written on the points you made so I can give it to my staff as kind of guideposts for how we do this.
Thank you, sir. We will, absolutely.
The Friendship Commons plan is going before the Development Review Committee of Planning on April 21st. It's the second item. The meeting starts at 9:30 a.m. Is that the Geico one? The Geico plan, that is the townhomes and.
So it's the EYA plan, not the Geico plan.
The Geico property.
Right, but it's EYA's plan, not
Yes,
yours.
EYA is involved on the Geico property, and it's going before Development Review Committee. And
Is that the preliminary plan, or the site plan, or the forest conservation plan?
sketch. She could. She said, could you come to the microphone and say what you said?
Oh.
I just wanted to let everyone know that the EYA proposal that's on the Geico property, the part that's going through Development Review Committee, it's scheduled for April 21st. It's the second item. The meeting starts at 9:30. You can actually go online and look at all the documents. And so that's the parts of the property that are going in under the 98 plan. So that's going ahead of the Friendship Heights sector plan.
Roger Cochetti, I will be brief and just say that you've heard a lot tonight about what people don't want. And I did want to thank you for not only coming to talk with us, but also speaking our language and talking in terms that people here can understand. I think that's very important, and your empathy for our situation is obvious. But I did want to spend just a minute and talk a little about what I think most people here do want, and that is what we do want is to preserve any green that we have. We have little green here. Preserve every bit that we have. We have limits on our view of the sky, what I would call preserve the blue, and we want to preserve whatever blue we have. But then I would add to that that I think what most people want is more green. And imagine for a moment that we had 2 or 3 soccer fields for this community. It would make it family friendly so that there could be a soccer field for little kids, a soccer field for young kids, and a soccer field for teenagers. Imagine if we had what you described, the baseball field. Imagine if we had a couple of baseball fields. Imagine if we had more green. So I think it's a general sense that you could see what people don't want, but I think what they do want is more green and more blue, or keep the blue that we have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jim Curtin, also from the Willoughby. We've turned out tonight. I just wondered what your thoughts are about just the revitalization of the Friendship Heights neighborhood. I've lived here since 1982. I remember when it was just a thriving, vibrant place with all kinds of commercial and retail and movie amenities. It feels like it's been left to die on the vine, where Bethesda and down by the cathedral in DC are sort of thriving, and we're just withering here. We kind of know sort of in broad strokes what happened and why, but is there anything that can be done? I mean, we hear from the planning board that, well, if you just move a lot more people here, that'll solve the problem. I'm not so sure that's the answer, but I'm not sure what the answer is. Anyway, thank you.
I mean, the fact that you've got one of the highest population densities ought to be sufficient to drive, customer support for the product that's here. It could be that the product that was planted here originally, which was a very high-end product. I mean, people talked about going here, and I forget where else they went, but it was not in Maryland, to shop comparable. That may not be a thing anymore. And if that's not a thing anymore, then the retail's got to evolve to match the people who live here and what they want. Bethesda struggles also. It is not a thriving, vibrant commercial area. It is not full of bustling, big shops. It's got a lot of small spaces and a fair amount of vacancy. So, retail in general has taken a nosedive, and not just here, but like nationally. So the question is, what fits in retail's place? A lot of what you see are restaurants. I think a lot of us wonder, is our restaurants going to be our perpetual dinner place, and we're not going to eat at home anymore? but it feels like sometimes that you see just a lot of the space getting occupied by restaurants. Small businesses would be ideal, but the rents can't be too high. You know, if you're going to bring in genuine local small businesses, you can't be charging rents for national brands because they have a very different profile in what they're able to pay. So I think there are a lot of things that we've got to think about consciously as we develop places, but obviously the strategy of saying everything on the ground floor retail, in a lot of places it leads to empty stores on the ground floor with no tenant going into them. So we might be better off if some buildings were allowed to be office from top to bottom or residential from top to bottom instead of insisting that everything be retail and then concentrate your retail more in a core. If I were a planner and I was, you know, under the old planning principles, and downtown Bethesda is actually a perfect example of this, you would not have put residential next to the metro. You would have put offices in the quarter mile around the metro, and you would have done residential in the quarter to a half mile. Tyson's Corner and the Virginia development, and Tyson's Corner, when I was growing up, was like the Wild West. It was like, and two crappy shopping centers, but a lot of shopping centers. Their policy around the metro is within a quarter mile of the metro, it's got to be 2/3 commercial, and within a quarter to a half mile, it has to be no less than 2/3 residential. People will walk farther to residential than they will walk to a job. So those seem to be the guidelines. Park and Planning got rid of that and created this thing called the CR zone, where a developer can decide what is the quickest buck I can make. And so if they decide that residential is something I can sell tomorrow, I will do that. And I will not patiently wait for the market to come for an office, or I will not improve my building and do the things or drop my rents that would attract companies there. There's a lot of stuff we've done that kind of, if anybody can do anything that the market tells them they think they can get the best return from, that is not community planning. That's not planning at all. That's just like individuals making economic choices and hoping it works out for everybody else, actually not worried about everybody else. It doesn't work out for them. So I think we've got to think about how we've done our planning in the county, and should we be more thoughtful? I never thought I would point to Virginia, but I spend a lot of time talking about what Virginia does. I tell my colleagues, if you have a place that's eating your lunch, you ought to look at what they're doing. How'd they get your lunch? You all don't know that Virginia is, commercial property is far higher taxed in Virginia than it is in Montgomery County. We are suckers on this. Your tax rate of $1.03, if you were in Tyson's Corner, you'd be paying $1.49, or less than $1.49. So if you were in the district, commercial property would be paying $1.89 if it was worth $10 million, $1.77 if it was worth $5 to $10 million, and $1.66 if it's worth $2 million to $5 million. And Montgomery County is $1.03 for Yes. Yes, look, I keep telling people, look, businesses are going to Virginia, not because the taxes are lower, but because they take the money, they build infrastructure, and people come there. We cannot build infrastructure in this county because we will not create a differential tax rate. I have tried probably all 8 years of my council, my executiveness, and most of the time I was on the council trying to get the county to adopt Virginia's tax structure. Because obviously the higher rents don't scare people away. The higher taxes don't scare the businesses away because this is what the businesses would say. The Virginia counties could only use the money for transportation. You can't feed people, you can't heal people, you can't do anything that might be vaguely look like a social program, but you can build transportation. And building transportation has got them what they needed. And I'm willing to build transportation to build an economic base that can deal with the problems I want to deal with. But doing what we're doing right now, where we don't build transportation, we don't tax these guys, and your rate is tied to their rate. I cannot charge a higher rate on commercial property than residential property because there's a Maryland law that says they have to be the same. We had a bill in the legislature that we could have gotten through, and the county council refused to take a position on that bill. And so we lost the bill. And the council, it only would have given them authority. It wouldn't have even told them what tax rate you had to adopt. They don't want the authority because as soon as you all know they've got the authority to have different tax rates, I know what you're going to be asking for, the same thing I'm going to be asking for. And they're protecting people. This is not a good situation to be in.
Thank you very much for being with us. I think we all want to have green space. Another thing that the community wants is a public library and performing arts center. Our village council has sent a letter to the library board and also to the county council requesting it. We recognize that we're near, of course, a metro station. We're near a center for buses. We're at a perfect location to have a public library and a performing arts center. So I hope that you'll be able to, as we all hope, when you join the county council, will be supportive of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mark. Since I remember your last two elections were rather close, it's fair to say that since this village supported you, overwhelmingly we made the difference in your winning. And we look forward to having you come back as county council member. I just want to second, since every political thing needs a second, I want to second what Evan Smith just said. We hear a lot, and the county will hear a lot from this village on what it doesn't want. It wants green space to continue. It doesn't want high rises everywhere. But we have worked with developers before. And as you wisely pointed out, up until about 8 years ago, the sector plans had a citizen group. I'm the last member of the last sector plan citizens group, and we had, and they had 14 or 15 people from all different interest groups, developers, citizen groups, elected officials, just plain residents, tenant groups. And we had to work things out. Yep. And that's how the present sector plan came about. Nobody got everything they wanted, but we found a consensus. I think what I'm hearing in all the meetings that I've gone to is that there is consensus over what Evan Smith just said. And that's a very positive, unique thing. This village is not interested in just having more people in more buildings. That's not a community. What makes a community special is what the community does with what it has. In a few weeks, we're going to celebrate 40 years of this building, a community center. And what Evan was mentioning was what I term a learning center, a library, an arts center, community theater, something unique in Montgomery County that will benefit the new EYA community, who, by the way, have responded positively to that. They're interested in working with this community, and that's why they're interested in following the present sector plan almost exactly. What remains to be built on the corridor of Geico not being presented right now, and on Saks is an area that will not impose on this village if there are higher rises. But the village needs something that has a community service, and a learning center unique for this village in this area will attract far more, I think, than more retail. This village was not founded because people wanted to come up here to go to retail stores. In fact, the village 100 years ago, I'm the historian of this village, the village was formed by people escaping from the city looking for green space and open skies, not for more Saks and more Neiman Marcus. So a learning center would be unique and special, and I know it would have your support as a former teacher. And thank you so much for coming here and being the strong supporter you've always been.
So you should raise this with the planning board about it in terms of amenities, because developers have to offer amenities. There's, not far from here, there's a apartment building, it is here, with a gym in it. Yeah, that was an amenity. If you want an art space or something like that, and somebody's building a larger building, you should ask for an art space.
The
in the larger
developers
building.
are interested in it. When the council, under Mayor Schaefer and the chair of our development committee, Francine Klein, wrote to Park and Planning, and they haven't even responded. So that added insult to injury. We got more of a positive response from the developers that expressed interest in it. But once you get back on the council, you'll be able to help.
That's my plan.
Hi, Mark, Sandra, Eula. We've worked together. I was in the planning department for 22 years, and I've lived in the village in the old Irene for 31 years now. So a couple interesting things that I note, and I have told your staff about the process that we have for the Geico property. Since Geico managed to preserve its regulatory development approvals over a very long period of time pursuant to the 98 plan, it means that they can go forward. So therefore, they don't have to go through the review that you would normally go through when a new sector plan was being proposed. Their development proposals are not put on hold, which is what we used to typically do. Here, we're not doing that. And so in new sector plans, one of the environmental review processes is that the carbon footprint of any proposal in a sector plan has to be reviewed. So it turns out that tearing down buildings has a very great impact on our carbon output, one of the greatest impacts. But that doesn't have to be taken into account here because they're not going through the sector plan process. And the regulatory review process doesn't take that into account. So that's an interesting thing. And then further, as people have noted, typically in a sector plan process, we would look around and say, is there anything now that we think is worth evaluating for historic preservation? And in 98, we weren't looking at mid-century buildings, but now mid-century buildings have aged up enough that we are considering them. And indeed, the planning department did do a big review of mid-century buildings in, around 2011, 2015. I worked on that. I was in historic preservation at the time. And they put out just a list of notable buildings. It's not a list that has any regulatory impact. It's not the preliminary locational atlas or not the final master plan of historic preservation, but it was meant to flag buildings that we might want to think about. But in fact here, because they kept their regulatory approvals alive, they don't have to consider historic preservation, and the staff for the master plan that's going on now don't have to make a recommendation about it. So we've missed that opportunity. And sometimes you can adaptively reuse a building, right? And sometimes that's economic to do, and sometimes it's not. But we do an evaluation to see if it's economically worth considering historic preservation, or even just historically keeping some of it, whether it's approved or not, designated or not. So, but that whole process is missing because they're not going through the sector plan. Okay, so I was on the bus tour that showed when we did mid-century modern, and Geico was stop number 1. So those are some kind of interesting things that are happening because you don't have to go through the sector plan now. So anything you can do to help us reshape this, it's probably too late, but if you can, it would be appreciated. And I will also say, maybe you're not hearing from them tonight, there are many people in this neighborhood who in fact who want more housing. They just want more housing, maybe in a less dense way. They do want more housing. Oh, and one final thing. If the Geico property were going through the sector plan process before getting developed, then the sector plan would have design guidelines about what should that big property look like. But, overall overarching design principles, should it be developed in one way or another way in terms of building materials and building motifs? But we can't do that either because we're not going through a sector planning process. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Tom Potter, and I'm a relatively recent arrival on the Maryland side of Friendship Heights, but I spent many years on the DC side of Friendship Heights. And just to add one little note to the fellow who's interested in blue and green, there's an office building on the corner of Friendship, on the corner of Jennifer Street and Wisconsin Avenue that is advertising availability of an entire floor of office space. And I think that kind of thing goes hand in hand with not seeing Maseratis parked on the plaza at Western Wisconsin anymore. But the message I hear from you is that there has to be a political movement here to get anything close to what people here want. And what I hear is what I feel. I'm one person with one idea, but I don't have a connection to any other person with a different idea. However, in the past here, there has been an organization that's been very effective that way, and it's more expansive than just the village. And that's the Citizens Coordinating Committee on Friendship Heights.
They're still here.
Which I believe still exists. Does anybody hear from it? Anybody hear from them? And if so, how about talking to get us involved in it? Yeah, I think that's an important thing.
Sorry, I hope the third one's going to be lucky. I just had I'm an architect by training, so my brain's very creative. I just had an idea to present to you when I heard Al Muller talking about a learning center. A gentleman was talking about an arts community. Another gentleman was talking about a soccer field. How about taking Geico and converting it into an arts and culture and sports area and preserving the historical building and incorporating all these needs the community has? It would work.
If it were free, but if you guys noticed, I'm struggling with a budget for which the schools have presented us with $2 billion repairs that need to be done, so much that even they're thinking of this as a 10-year or longer piece. So the idea of coming with big capital projects is a real challenge right there. It certainly couldn't be done in this budget because I used every available dime that I had in this budget, and then some extras that I don't have yet. So it's a challenge. We've put ourselves in a box by the things we've done, and we never should have let the schools get that far behind on construction. It was a big mistake.
This will be the last.
Okay, since we all have to get political, thank you for telling us that this is what we have to do. My understanding from you, Roy, is that there are a couple of meetings with the county executive candidates coming up at Westland Middle School. See, okay, whoever is putting this on. Westland Middle School is off Massachusetts Avenue, Little Falls Parkway. We can all get there. It's a large cafeteria. We've been there before. They're going to be county council candidates also at a different time. So maybe you could just explain to us what both the dates are. Well, maybe everybody here should. Yeah, okay. We got it on a listserv in my building at the Irene. But, yeah, I know you did, that's why I'm asking you. I think one is the 18th for the county council candidates, or, I'm sorry, for the executive candidates, and then another one later in the month, maybe the 28th, for the county council candidates. So that's where we should all show up, ask our questions of these people, and tell them how we feel, because that's where the politics happens.
Yep.
So thank you.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I was here till you guys were done with questions.
Yeah, so. Right. Okay. So I just, again, thank you to County Executive Elrich. I'm glad it was very well attended. There was also a live stream audience. You were very generous with your time, and we appreciate that. And I expect, based on what we've heard here, we will have a continuing dialogue with your office. So thank you again for joining us.
Vote for Mark.
Thank you
Okay,
again.
there's a missing
Really
hearing aid.
educational.
If anybody can